Well, Dr. George Stansbury was a real inspiration to us. We knew that he graduated from Morgan and subsequently went on and attended the medical school. But Dr. Stansbury used to come back and speak to us in the classrooms about his experience. He was very competitive. He liked to excel. And so one of the things that he inspired us to be the best that we could be.
Service to the community was and is the lasting legacy of the Stansbury family.
His father, of course, having been very prominent in the community, he was instrumental in getting this school, because there weren't any schools in the county for black children. And he was one of the leaders in getting this school.
We couldn't go to the library. We'd had to use the library in our schools. And Mr. Clayton Stansbury was one of the ones who made a way for us to be able to go to the library, the public library.
So having had his son grow up and then come back as a community doctor, everyone was very pleased.
Mr. Clayton was the type of person that sort of helped your own, the other adults to know how to back your children and to just keep them lifted up so that they would know each generation things are going to get better, but we got to keep working at it in order for it to become something in the end. One of the ladies that used to work in the office used to call his mother J. Hoover, because they said that she knew everything. She was in charge. In other words, the Stansbury family was the family as a whole. They were all involved in trying to help all of us as a people be able to be the best that we could be.
When he went to Howard University Medical School, one of his teachers, it was Dr. Charles Drew. Dr. Charles Drew founded blood plasma. And so Dr. Stansbury, well, he was a student of his there, but he was actually sort of a lab assistant. He would work in the lab.
Well, Dr. Stansbury's expertise was so excellent that it was known throughout the county, as well as other counties throughout Maryland. And his reputation preceded him.
And everybody in the community was happy that we was getting a black doctor, and they was just thrilled. And his office would stay full from morning to night.
I remember this particular day, I heard one of my sisters say, Dr. Stansbury's here. And I took off running down the hall to my bedroom and got up under the bed because I figured he was going to give us a shot. And Dr. Stansbury came in after me. And he got down on the floor and he said, my nickname was Veenie. He said, Veenie, come on. And he reached and grabbed my leg and pulled me from up under the bed. He was very personable and had a wonderful sense of humor.
After graduation, I worked at Hartford Memorial Hospital as an orderly. And that's when I first worked with Dr. Stansbury. He had people from all races and he had a large practice. I think it was his manner, the way he carried himself. And he listened, and I think that's what people like. He would listen to what you had to say.
I remember most his kindness. And I remember, I guess, by having gone to him all of my life, the day that my grandmother died and he came to the house and he knew that we were very close, and he sat down to talk to me about what was going to happen to her. And I was happy that he sat down to do that.
I remember my dad talking about was that Dr. Stansbury was a very good physician and was a perfectionist. As a matter of fact, it was often told that his handwriting, and it was like a work of artistic beauty, which is not exactly or even remotely how you think of doctors' writing.
When you went into his office, he would make you feel that he really wanted to help you.
And make you feel at ease.
Yes, he would make you feel at ease.
He would see you at night, even when he closed. And you go and knock on his door. You would tell you to come to his back door and knock on the door, and he would see you, whether you had money or not. It wasn't about the money. It was about taking care of the patients that he was seeing.
I don't know how Dr. Stansbury survived because, and it wasn't but $5 or $10 or $5, I don't know what it was, but whether you had any money or not, you could go to Dr. Stansbury and he would see to you. And I'm sure half of Havre de Grace owed him money.
He believed that there was nothing blocked in your way. And if there was something in your way, there were people there to help you. At one time, there were 4 of us in college, and my parents did not have a great deal of money. We'd go knock on his back door to his office and say, "Doc, the semester's over. We're starting a new semester. I need a book, and it costs like $35. And he just tell you, go out and tell Shirley. Shirley Lilly was the secretary. Tell Shirley, and Shirley would write you a check.
Dr. Stansbury and his family were instrumental in helping my brother go to college. My brother went to the University of Maryland down on Eastern Shore, Princess Anne, and they were very instrumental in helping him to go to college and stay in college.
Dr. Stansbury embodied the giving you that calming feeling that whatever happens, he's going to be there. He's going to do whatever is necessary. And then you didn't have to fear whatever was to come because you could always call on him.
We couldn't go to the stores or the little fountains that they have. Like we used to have a reed fountain, and we weren't allowed to go in those stores. You know, we had to go to the back of the store to get whatever we wanted. And then as far as the Havre de Grace movie, they had a movie, we had to go upstairs. The whites at the bottom, and we had to go upstairs.
We relocated from Virginia, the development that we moved in. It was a newly built development. Mainly blacks lived there. And during that time, some of the folk in Havre de Grace, some of the racist people were not for that. And so there was some cross burnings and some threats that took place. I remember personally being threatened when I was on my way to a Little League baseball game, me and some of my friends. And so we were walking down the street, and a gentleman called me over to his car. This is a white gentleman. He called me over to his car. I recognized him to be a brother of one of the people on my baseball team. And I went over to the car and to the driver's seat window. When I looked in the window, he had a gun pointed at me. And he told me, he says, he used the N-word. He said, "I will kill you." And I'm a young boy. I'm 8, 9 years old. But I saw, I don't know, I looked at him and he looked at me, and I just walked away. I don't know, just, you know, but those are kind of things that we encountered, the cross burning and the threats.
One of my biggest memory was there was a young lady that I played with every day. And then one particular day, my mother came outside and said, "You better get in here and do your homework." So I did my homework, went back outside, and when I went outside, the young girl said, "Oh, I didn't know you went to school." And come to find out, we were the same age and in the same grade, but didn't go to the same school.
There was a school bus that came halfway up the road where we lived to pick up the white children. But we had to walk 2 miles in order to catch a train to come to Havre de Grace, to high school.
I went to Morgan in September of 1944, graduated in 1948. Then I went to library school in Atlanta, Georgia, because the state of Maryland would not allow blacks to go to the library school here at the University of Maryland. They paid for my tuition rather than allow me to go to school at the University of Maryland.
Dr. Stansbury graduated from the Havre de Grace Colored School in 1939. And a lot of the equipment that the school got was the old equipment that came from the white school. And whenever they got new material, they passed the old material down to us.
We did not have lab. We did not have a science book.
But in spite of that, our educators were well prepared and they understood the situation and explained to us, and especially Dr. Stansbury, the importance of striving and working to the best of your ability.
Oh yes, certainly the healthcare in itself, you did not have the doctors to go to advise you and give the necessary support in terms of health services that the white community had. Dr. Stansbury was the only Black physician there. If you had an illness, you had a tendency to try to work around it.
And then over at the Havre de Grace Hospital, there was only a little area downstairs in the back for Black people.
It was a colored ward who had limited materials, limited supplies. And the white ward had all the supplies that they needed.
Black patients were only allowed on the first floor, and white patients were on the upper level. And if there wasn't any room on the first floor, they left them in gurneys on the first floor. They would not, even though there was room on the second floor for the patients.
But we were only allowed at Dr. Stansbury on Revolution and Stoke Street. I knew that that was the only doctor that, being a Black child, that I could go to, regardless of the fact that around the corner from me, the whole street, Union Avenue, was loaded with doctors.
If it had not been for Dr. Stansbury, Black people in Havre de Grace, there would be services and things that we would never have had or been offered.
I think it was really important and valuable that Havre de Grace had a well-respected, well-educated African-American general practitioner, because obviously the care that they were going to get at that historical time, it wasn't equal but separate, it was less than equal. So they were very fortunate to have Dr. Stansbury there. He was the ultimate general practitioner, as they were then. They took all comers, they listened to their patients, they cared about their patients.
So Dr. Stansbury was the one who really helped us come through that trying situation that we had during that period of time.
And then, of course, later on, in terms of our family, when Dr. Hirsch came to town, he worked with people regardless, as well as Dr. Stansbury.
My family came to Havre de Grace in 1955. It was quite a journey. My parents were both born in Germany, And as many people of Jewish faith had to do, they had to escape. When my father heard about the idea that he should have a segregated practice, he just rejected that idea. He just couldn't even understand it. I think he was just appalled that this could exist in this country that he had come to as the land of freedom. And my dad, from the time that he arrived, had an open policy, open waiting room, no special hours, no special waiting rooms, everything equal. There was actually a separate delivery room for African Americans in the hospital. And my dad said to Dr. Stansberry, this is just wrong. We shouldn't have a separate delivery suite for African Americans. And he said to George, he said, you have to help me. We have to change this. And Dr. Stansberry said to my dad, Hirsch, and he just called him Hirsch, I can't help you. I can't do that. You have to do it yourself. The story I'd like to share, which may explain a little bit about why Dr. Stansberry didn't feel empowered to make the change, really came to light. And I just recently reread this in my dad's book, which is called From Exile to Life. The cross they burn is ours. At the last city council meeting, one was witness to a moving demonstration of citizen complacency, apathy, and plain disinterest in the welfare of active and interested fellow citizens of our town. Dr. Stansberry, a well-known African-American medical doctor and active fellow citizen of Havre de Grace, brought to the attention of the council and all of the onlookers at the meeting the incident that had occurred several days before, when a cross was burned at his residence. The cross burning was the kind that we have read about before as being the work of the infamous Ku Klux Klan. It is most regrettable that we here in Havre de Grace allow our residents to suffer the indignities wrought by the fanatical Klan. Dr. Stansberry made reference to this incident first and foremost in his speech, but this was only part of what he had to say. He brought forth facts, perhaps unwelcome to many, of the continuous indignities that he and members of his race must suffer. The good doctor pointed out the ghetto-type housing that is offered to Negroes here, the slums and semi-slums, the few opportunities for good-paying employment, the unhappy problem of segregation that remains only partially solved, and this only because of the Supreme Court rulings. It is high time that all Americans put aside their prejudices and begin to realize that a large segment of our population that is Negro is entitled to full rights and all privileges as American citizens.
So I think Dr. Stansberry's experience mirrored what many of us went through, and we went through it like it was not ours to own. All of the ills of the society and the manifestations of people thinking that you're less than you are, if we don't own it, then it doesn't matter.
I knew Dr. Stansberry because he was the doctor that delivered me. He was our family physician for years. I was born in Harford Memorial Hospital in 1953. And my situation was I was born as a premature baby, and I had difficulty breathing when I was born. And there was no access to incubators at Harford Memorial for the Black babies. So I was sent to Johns Hopkins Hospital, and I stayed there until I recovered enough to be sent home. My situation wasn't as dire as the situation for the Stamps baby. So even though I didn't get the care that I needed there at Harvard Memorial, there wasn't a bad outcome for me.
She lived over in an area called Port Deposit, Cecil County, maybe about 15 miles from here. When she went into labor, her husband notified Doc, and they brought her over to the hospital.
And there, Patricia was admitted to the segregated unit, but there was an urgent emergency delivery. The delivery wasn't going as expected. That required advanced equipment, neonatal equipment, things such as an incubator, oxygen-enriched environment. That equipment was available on an upper floor of Harford Memorial up in the white maternity unit. But the norms of the time did not admit African Americans to those units. Dr. Stansbury certainly would have been her advocate that difficult night, but eventually a white nurse, Mr. Stamps said, took baby Carlos and rushed him to the upper floor of the hospital, but it was too late. Carlos had passed away. Well, on this troubling night, Patricia will also die.
After the baby died, Pat simply needed the proper oxygen equipment when our lungs collapsed. The equipment that they finally brought to Dr. Stansbury on the floor wouldn't even work.
Within a few days, they were laid to rest at a cemetery in northern Harford County. Mr. Stamps initiated a lawsuit. He wasn't looking for compensation for the loss. The compensation he was looking for was for the hospital to integrate. Well, of course, a suit worked its way through the judicial system, and this was a very complicated process.
During the lawsuit, Dr. Stansbury was being blamed for my wife's death, and I knew for a fact it wasn't his fault.
And 1 year before, the nation changed, and things like Medicare and Medicaid and the civil rights bills came along. Harford Memorial settled the suit, agreeing to integrate the hospital.
Dr. Stansbury loved being a doctor.
He was the knight in shining armor because we could not get the kind of care that we needed in other places.
A lot of us may not be alive if it hadn't been for Dr. Stansbury.
He was a role model. Back in those days, anyone Black that accomplished anything, it was like all of us went along for the ride. It was like it was for everybody.
And he encouraged us religiously, socially, economically, any way he possibly could encourage you, he would do that. He was that kind of person.
And we could attribute a lot of our success to his path that he traveled. And it wasn't for him, we would have not had that drive, that competitive spirit.
You see it in the news. Healthcare, the environment, school safety, a free press, women's rights. They are all being threatened. We can no longer take for granted the progress we have worked so hard to achieve in Maryland and in Howard County. We need a strong voice in Annapolis to protect the values that are so important to us and our families. And I will be that voice. I won my primary election, but now I face a tough opponent in the general, and I need your financial support more than ever. Please click the donate button in the email you received and show me that you agree that this time there's just too much at stake. Thank you for your support.
Mark your calendars for the next Power Connectors Breakfast, a speed networking event sponsored by Baltimore Region Business Chambers and networking organizations. There will be a full breakfast buffet, door prizes, and lots of great connections. Just 100 seats are available and they always go quickly. So reserve your seat now at powerconnectorsbreakfast.com.